Or you watch Tennessee fans invade Ohio Stadium and then watch them leave in the third quarter because their team got smoked. A lot of mad Tennessee fans today, not necessarily mad at Ohio State, but mad at their own team's situation because they really didn't even show up for that game.
Yeah, so it is kind of a lot to unpack with Tennessee, too. We were so fixated on Ohio State the last few days that, like, this is interesting. And I think at the end of this video, I want to congratulate them for the effort they made as fans to make memorable, because
that's incredible.
I covered Ohio State 10 years, never saw a team come close to having that many fans in their building. So we'll get to that. But the thing with Tennessee is this, before we get into, are we at their ceiling? Because I think that's crazy. But was this season a success? And, I think back to the column that I wrote about Indiana after the Notre Dame game.
Right.
And I'll connect the dots here in a second. But
good, because the Tennessee fans are very mad to be compared to Indiana.
I'm not comparing you to Indiana, okay. But I'm going to explain that, like, Indiana came into the Notre Dame game and got their doors blown off by a team that has been investing and doing things at a level that they haven't been doing for nearly as long. Indiana lost the game. The perspective of Indiana losing the game isn't that they failed or that they should have won. The perspective is building a team in college football, though easier to have improvement year over year, is still a process. It's a multi-year deal. And Tennessee, to get where it needs to go, needs to be in these games for years, because the more they're in these games, and, the hope is obviously as you continue to exist in them, you become more competitive and start winning them, then the talent comes more, the high school recruiting improves, and it's nothing that you guys don't know. But, like, at this point in Tennessee's build, and I don't know what you think, because he's been there now, for 3 years?
4 years.
4 years. Like, maybe you feel like he should be further along, but is the standard of Tennessee's football program right now, 4 years into Heupel's tenure, after people hated the hire to begin with, to be able to beat a team that has been investing in national championship caliber football on the road when a $20 million roster? Like, is that how you're going to view your program? Because, like, I think that's irrational.
No, I don't think Tennessee's nearly there yet, and I don't think they're at their ceiling.
Are they supposed to be?
I think they've made acceptable progress. This is a successful year. They needed to get back on this stage. Winning on this stage is hard. There's other steps to be taken, but they needed to get back to this stage first. And so they get back to this stage. You see how hard it is, and now you know what you got to deal with. Now,
I mean, think about this Tennessee program during the Butch Jones era.
Right.
I mean, like, they have had decades of irrelevance. And since Heupel took over, they had the Jalen Hyatt team.
Mm-hmm.
They had this team. They played in their first playoff game. I know they wouldn't have made the 14 field, but making the 14 field was really, really hard. Like, these are progressions that you want to see in your program. And I understand that they're losing players, but, like, they invested all this money in a quarterback who hasn't come close to reaching his ceiling yet.
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit more of what Nico could do in the run game.
But I don't think by any stretch of the imagination on Saturday night you looked at that and go, that's who he is.
No, because he didn't have anybody to throw to. When Nico dropped back, there was nobody open. And so, look,
when you have overt,
Josh Heupel doesn't need us to tell him he needs to go get some receivers. Like, we know, everybody knows that.
When you have overt roster holes and you're playing against a team that has none,
you're gonna have a problem.
You're gonna have a problem. Like, that's just the way. And, like, Ohio State was able to exploit that because their secondary, like, people forget, Ohio State's defense is awesome. Like, it might.
We spend all the time talking about their offense because their defense never really has that big of a problem. Like, they just motor along.
Their defense hasn't given up. I mean, outside of the Oregon game, no, and they have some of the best receivers in college football. Nobody's moving the ball on them. Even Michigan didn't move the ball on them until the end. So, I feel like the context of everything is always so important, because Tennessee will compare themselves directly to Ohio State because that's who they just got done playing. But I don't know if that's the correct rubric. Like, that's I
can tell you who Tennessee needs to start comparing itself now. Because I think it was Alabama before. They've now beaten Alabama twice in the last 3 years.
They're at the current, like, progression of programs. I don't know where you stand on this, but is Tennessee further along than Alabama currently is? Or
they're in a similar place. We'll have to see what happens with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, but they're in a similar place right now. The one Tennessee needs to aspire to, that they need to figure out how to beat.
I have no idea who you're going to say. I'm excited. I'm intrigued.
It's a team that's on their schedule pretty much every year. They need to figure out how to beat them, because if they can beat them, they can compete with a team like that Ohio State team they saw last night.
Georgia.
It's Georgia. Like, since Heupel's been there, they've been non-competitive against Georgia. This year was the closest.
I thought they played a pretty good game against them this year.
This was the closest, but Georgia pulled away at the end.
And Georgia's not as good as they've been.
Right.
But yeah.
So that's the type of team, because we keep wondering if schematically this offense can beat teams like that, because we've not seen it.
But, Andy, like when you actually like I know for 20 years it was the collection of 4 teams winning it every year. And I know that we've seen in the current era teams go from bad or not great to great in 1 year. But who is the team that has won a national championship overnight? Like even Michigan, who came out of the blue last year.
That Michigan process started in 2021.
That was a 4-year process.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so it takes time. And I understand that Heupel is in year 4, but building it in the SEC is a process.
Well,
so
I think this will be the test for him, because he brings the quarterback back, but clearly they need better receivers. They're going to have to. They've got older offensive linemen who are graduating. They got James Pierce is going to the draft. Older defensive linemen that are going to the draft. They are going to have to show that they can build this program. Now, they also have guys like David Sanders, who's the #1 offensive line recruit in the country, coming in. So,
and also too, context again, Andy, starting point matters.
Yes.
Like, it's not like they like
the starting point was Jeremy Pruitt's just been fired and everybody's going into the portal. Like, Josh Heupel had a pretty tough start.
Yeah.
And has overcome that.
And in the last video, we were talking about Kirby Smart a few years into his tenure and Ryan Day into his. And I was like, oh, Ryan Day started way more further along than some of these other
Now, Josh
coaches.
Heupel needs to evolve. I think, you've got to be able to figure out when you're off. Now, listen, against Ohio State, maybe there was a situation where this was not going to work because Dylan Sampson was hurt and the receivers just aren't good enough. The part with the receivers not being good enough, you got to fix that if you're Josh Heupel.
Well, I actually think, and the more we watch the sport, and I've said this a few times, Andy, I really think that receiver is becoming one of the top 3 most crucial positions in football, in college football anyway.
Because, we saw it with Jeremiah Smith last night.
Like Ohio State has 4, but all they needed is that one. You have Jeremiah Smith on your team, you can't not cover the man. Even on their interception, the guy was interfered with. So, like, it's crucial. But program ceiling, if you think that Tennessee is at their program ceiling with we saw from those fans and what we saw from the support of that team and their coach and their quarterback who's not fully along, that is insane.
Yeah.
And I'll write about that. Like,
they are definitely not at their ceiling. I'm excited about the next iteration of Tennessee because there's a lot of good players that are leaving. Can Josh Heupel keep this up? Can he continue to reload? Can they evolve? Can they get better?
Because it felt like go ahead. I keep interrupting you. I'm having a bad morning with that.
It's all right. I think Josh Heupel has shown us in his time as the head coach at UCF and as the head coach at Tennessee that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and the team 3 years ago that was really, really fun with Hendon Hooker and
2 years ago.
Knight.
Yeah,
was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
It was Cedric Tillman on that team.
Yep.
Like, it felt like, that's just they got some really exciting players and their offense is clicking. That's a blip on the plan. But that's not what it was. That was like the first step, and things didn't work out the following year with Joe Milton, and everyone knows that. But Nico's still very young. Well, he's got one more year.
The assumption is Nico goes pro after his junior year, so maybe that doesn't happen either. Maybe you do get 2 more years with him. But let's just say minimum you're getting 3. You've got another year with him. Now's the time. Get your asses in the portal. Mm-hmm. Go get some receivers. Plug the holes in the offensive line. And keep winning. Keep being one of the best teams in the SEC and see if you can take that next step.
And you're always the one that says knocking on the door is important.
It is absolutely. I said it with Kirby Smart over and over again when people said, people kept trotting out the 1980 jokes with Georgia and Kirby Smart. They kept saying, well, he can't win it. They haven't won since 1980. He can't do it. And I'm like, he's on the doorstep every freaking year. Eventually, you're going to break through. And
you might just trip over yourself and fall through the door, but it's going to happen. The more, it's like the roulette table. You know what I mean? Every time the wheel spins, you got another shot.
No, they didn't trip. They just happened to have 6 first-round defensive linemen on the same team.
No, I'm saying anyone who. I mean, you hit on on a 10, 100 times, one might like you. I mean, I don't know,
Exactly.
like,
And that's the thing. If Josh Heupel can keep getting Tennessee back to this spot and make incremental improvements, they'll break through. They will break through. It'll happen.
And I wanted to take a moment, Andy, now that we're at the tail end of this video. I know that I have had my run-ins with Vol Twitter during this year, but I wanted to say, like, and I mean it, I think you guys are awesome. Like, I think that what you did, and I think part of it was, opportunity, because Ohio State fans, the ticket prices were lower, and like the sentiment in Columbus was pretty down going into the game. They still
did it.
But to rally around your team the way that you did, to make that drive, to come in the cold, to put, what was it, 30,000 people into the stadium?
At least.
Know what it was.
It was a lot of freaking people.
Like, to buy the jukeboxes, to make the graphics, like all the stuff.
Somebody bought an inflatable Block M Michigan logo and was tailgating with it in the parking lot.
Like,
it was incredible.
And I know that you're being piled on today, and that's part of it, because when you risk your heart, you fear it getting broken.
That's right.
But I just want to say that, like, some of you are nuts, and I think that's great. I'm nuts. We're all a little
nuts
upstairs.
You're nuts in the best possible way.
But I also think that you are the essence of what makes this sport what it is. Like, you are the essence of why I do this for a living. You're the reason why we have a show. So keep doing what you're doing. The entire point of being a fan is the experience. It's the ride, right? You're not just a fan because they have to win a national title. You're a fan because you make memories and create.
And you guys have been through some crap.
Yeah,
let's be real here. You've been through a lot.
Like, you're going to remember that time you took your kid up 71 to Columbus. You're going to remember the time that, you made the graphics, and, like, do you be unapologetically crazy, and, like, thank you for enriching my trip here. Cause, like, I covered this team for a long time. I had never seen anything like that. And, like, is that
he's going to argue with you again the first time you guys disagree. I mean,
if you're nuts, I'm still going to yell at you. Like, if you're irrational, I'm still going to get mad. But I think that, like, for me, I question a lot, Andy, of, like, why have I always in my entire life since I was a kid gravitated to college football more than the NFL?
It's that. There's none of that in the NFL.
And, like, I don't know if I'm getting sentimental because it's, like, almost New Year's and, like, I'm sad the season's coming to an end. But, like, frick, I love you guys. Like, I thank you for that. That was awesome. So anyway, if you hate me and you think I'm a Buckeye home or whatever, it is what it is. But I hope that felt real to you, because it was.
Beautiful. Vol Twitter. There's no off season for you. We know that.
Yeah, get to work, guys.
We're not crying over that. We know you're going to keep coming at us. So keep it coming.